Okay, I guess I'll get started then, because apparently people can see and hear me. So anyway, great to see some of you, or not really, but anyway, whatever. Virtual conferences, it's it is what it is. We've been doing them for a while now, and it's all terrible. And hopefully, we get to be in person at some point. But hey, this is how it's going to be for a while. So I'm Cortney. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Friends with Holograms. We're a full service virtual and augmented reality agency. We're based in the US, but we have worked pretty much everywhere. And we've worked with a lot of big companies. We've worked with Accenture, PwC, Verizon, Coca Cola, Walmart, Lowe's, Meta, Facebook, whatever they're calling themselves these days. So, yeah, I mean, we have done a lot of really amazing projects on racial bias, workplace inclusion, child welfare, mental health, community policing. So our focus is really virtual reality for training and enterprise. And within that, we have a social good and social impact focus. So I'd like to use the time today. I'll just go through our deck a little bit, give you some background on why we believe virtual reality works so well for social impact and talk through some case studies. And then we can, if there's a little bit of time left at the end, we can do some Q&A. So let me share my screen really quickly with folks. One second. Okay. So hopefully folks can see this. I am flying a little bit blind because I'm doing this full screen. So my apologies if things go sideways. Anyway, so this is a little bit of our deck. But here's our core perspective. Training in virtual reality is the next best thing to training in real life. And oftentimes there are scenarios where you can't train in real life, either because it's too dangerous, right? So thinking about, if you're a firefighter, if you're a first responder, if you are doing, sort of heavy construction, right? You can't just send someone out there with a chainsaw, for example, and expect them to cut stuff up without training them first. Also, the ethical implications of training, social workers not prepared to ask a family about their situation and have an empathetic conversation with them. While that's not dangerous in the physical sense, that can be really dangerous to a family that's in crisis. So we really believe that this is the next best thing to doing something in real life. And I'll talk about sort of our perspective on embodiment a little bit in a minute. So again, it's not feasible to train in the real world a lot of the time. And in other situations, VR training can shorten the training cycle, right? So we see people learning much more quickly when they train in VR, which is really important. And another huge component of this is, when workers are trained better, then they do a better job. It's better for the company. It's better for them because they feel empowered. It's less dangerous for them. So we really believe that from a worker's perspective, VR training is incredibly important. Here's some stats about why VR is great, basically. So you can see you have this huge increase in learning quality and retention, big reductions in training time, big increase in learning recall and effectiveness. So again, these are massive numbers. This is not just about incremental change. This is about really reshaping how we train. This is a really great statistic. This almost blows me away. This is from Imperial Medical College in London, and they had students divided into two groups. One group trained in VR, the other group trained in traditional methods, and then they tested them, and you can see the huge split in how well the VR training worked versus the traditional training method. And I'll kind of say this for the statistic as well, because this is huge. But I think another thing to consider is people really want to train in VR, right? So they were training people on, in this case, pretty simple surgical procedures that, if you're a medical student and you want to be a cardiac surgeon or something, learning how to do a knee replacement might be kind of boring for you. So what we found is that even when you're training people to do very simple repetitive tasks in VR, people are excited about it. So I was talking to someone recently and they had done a VR training program for something very basic, like stocking a shelf, right? And, this was the type of training that people resisted doing. They didn't want to do it. They didn't like it, blah, blah, blah. And now he actually had to turn people away because people would come and want to play the game over and over again, even after they'd gone through and passed the training. People would just show up and want to put the headset on. So, he said it was great because once they got everyone through, you had people learning more and more and getting really excited about learning. So that's another huge benefit. This is in reference to an experience that we've built for child welfare workers, which I'll go into in a little greater detail in a minute. But again, you see the huge decrease in employee turnover, huge reduction in training costs, and this is super impactful, right? from a financial perspective, from a training perspective, and from a family perspective. A huge issue in child welfare is that because there's such a high turnover rate when it comes to caseworkers, what you see is families have a very hard time sort of bonding with any single caseworker because, you know, they create a relationship with a family and then in 6 months they leave and someone else has to come in and build that trust up again. So this isn't just like a money saving thing, although it's saved millions of dollars in caseworker turnover costs, but it's also helped families like have better outcomes because they really feel like they can bond with a caseworker now and be honest and get the work done. So that's super exciting. So I'll talk a little bit about some design principles that we have in terms of how do you build for virtual reality for social impact. So the first thing you have to do is simulate reality. So we work with actors and real people, right? We don't use computer generated models. And I don't know if anyone saw this article that came out yesterday, but BuzzFeed wrote about a company that's a competitor of ours called Mersion. And Mersion uses avatars, but they use human actors to voice the avatars. Let's just set that aside because that makes no sense, but let's just set that aside for now. And they found out that a lot of the characters of color were being voiced by white actors, right? So it was essentially kind of like digital blackface in a way, which is obviously awful. So we don't touch that. We work with real people, actors, and that's where you get this great sense of connection, right? Because looking at like a terrible looking video game character doesn't engender the same type of connection that working with a real person does. The second principle is that everything has to be interactive. And the interactivity has to be realistic, right? So, you know, obviously we're kind of fudging things sometimes, right? We are using scripts and prompts and things like that. So in real life, you don't have that. But in terms of how you interact, right? If it's a conversational piece, we're using voice, right? Because we talk to each other. We don't like use controllers to point at each other. You know, if something is more tactile, then we use the controller and you can pick objects up and move them around, but we're not having you like click on a prompt because that makes no sense, right? So it has to be really realistic and really interactive. And then again, one size doesn't fit all. So, you know, we really work with our clients to create these custom solutions because we want to make sure we're adapting to like company culture. And for example, a piece we did for a hardware store recently, we shot at one of their stores. The folks who are playing employees in the scenes are wearing like the vest and the branding of the company. So, you know, that then creates a sense of like realism, much more than something generic could. You know, again, just more cost savings, the advantages. This is a little bit about us and our capabilities. I'll skip that slide. So let's talk about some case studies that we've done. The first is Accenture Avenues, and we've worked with Accenture on a couple different occasions now. And these are the pieces for the child welfare workers. So you can see this was a really big, complex piece. It's 20 minutes long. It's voice activated, multiple characters, multiple choices, and it did really well. You can see the last point. It's been recognized inside the company. It's been recognized external to the company. It's done incredibly well. And so this for us was a hugely important piece because, again, we want to put people in a situation that changes how they think. And so I've shown this piece to a lot of people. And, you know, most of the people that I know are not child welfare workers. They are technologists and they're just friends of mine. And people get so into this piece, right? I've had people cry. I've had people, you know, ask me lots of questions about it afterwards. And people who are not, you know, friends of mine, the guy who cuts my hair did it. And he like went through the entire piece and was asking me all these questions while he was cutting my hair. So this is the type of thing where, again, you get people to think really critically and also kind of doubt themselves. So the way this piece worked is you had all these different questions you could ask. You got different answers depending on the question you asked. So you could come away with a portrait of this family that is like, yeah, they're not doing great, but they're trying and they love each other and you can help them. Or you can come away with a portrait of this family is like, oh, these people are not doing well and the kids aren't safe. So it's really the type of thing where we had a lot of gray area and nuance, much like real life. The second case study I wanted to go over is DDI. So DDI is a leadership consulting firm that we worked with. And this piece really cemented something for me. And this has been something that we've carried through the rest of our work, which is you cannot put on a VR headset and become a different person. Like, it is not physically possible. It's not emotionally possible. it's almost in a way discounting someone else's lived experience. Because if I can say, oh, I understand what it's like to be a woman of color, for example, because I put on a VR headset, well, that's absurd. I can't undo 41 years of being myself by putting on a headset for 15 minutes to do an experience. So this really cemented for us a key principle of how you make great VR for social impact, which is people have to come as themselves and experience things as themselves. And that's where the impact is going to come. So with this piece, for example, you are playing a corporate manager, right? Because that's the audience for this piece, right? But that's all you know. You don't know anything else about yourself except that's your job. So this is a way that we can reach people across all different categories. And this piece is called Can't Win because it's literally like you go into this meeting and you can't do anything right. And we cast this diverse group. It's a little hard to see the pictures on the slide, but the main cast is a very diverse group of women, but it's all just super corporate, right? It's all about like picking a vendor for a new product and blah, blah, blah. But people who go through it, and especially men who go through it, get really unnerved by it because they've never felt that level of exclusion that they do in this piece. And you can see the last comment, this guy said it wasn't a conversation, it was an emotional experience. He's gone through and changed a lot of his internal policies since then. And, this really points to other pieces that we've done. So the piece that I was referencing earlier, the piece on racial bias for the hardware company or the hardware store, in that piece, you are a customer in the store. And this associate comes up to you, and at first he's being pretty nice, and then he gets ruder and ruder and more intense, and he's profiling you, but you don't know why, right? It's revealed later on why he's profiling you. But for most of that piece, you're just like, what is up with this guy? And we've demoed that piece now for a lot of different people. We were doing a lot of user testing, and all of the white men we showed it to were like, that was so uncomfortable, that was so weird, that was awful, da 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 da, which is exactly the response we wanted, right? And all the people of color we showed it to were like, oh yeah, you got it, right on, which is terrible, right? It's terrible that even in this day and age we're still dealing with that. But that for us was kind of a huge win because, we built something that was going to catch people off guard and make them have really intense feelings. This is, again, a little bit more of other clients we've worked with. Some awards and some press that's written about us, which is fantastic. We always appreciate when people pay attention to the work that we do. And this is our company. And if you'll notice, we are a really diverse company. We're 50-50 male-female. We're 50-50 non-white. And that's really important. And I think when you're dealing with stuff around social impact and diversity and inclusion, you want to work with a company that embodies those values. This is my contact info. If people want to screenshot it, you can email me. You can text me. I'm in the US, obviously by my mobile number. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm also on all the different social platforms, just as my name. I'm pretty easy to find. So if you have questions, comments, I think we have a few minutes left. I'm just looking at my phone. All right, yeah, we got like 5 minutes. So let's do some questions. And then if you didn't get a chance to ask your question, go ahead and hit me up another time. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this. Okay, cool. So that is it. So it looks like we've got a couple more minutes. Does anyone have any questions? All right, well, if no one has any questions, then thanks so much for checking the session out. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much to the folks at Upstart for having me. And yeah, like I said, if you had a question but you didn't think of it, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, Instagram. It's just my name. It's Cortney Harding. The Friends with Holograms website is friendswithholograms.com. You can find more information on what we do there. And yeah, thanks so much. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, evening, morning, whatever time zone you're in watching this conference. And yeah, thanks so much for having me, everyone.